It's very, very nice to be here with you all this morning, and enjoyed so much having your counterparts, the ones that are building the foundation for you, those K through 3 teachers. So it was so wonderful to be with them this morning and to share with them. What we're going to do in this session is a couple of things. We're going to be, first of all, making a tool that you can use or pass along with your students as well. And what I wanted you to do is to have it to play with for the rest of the year, so that you can kind of see what works and what you want to add, how you want to change it, and so forth. It's a wonderful tool just for you as a teacher, but it's also wonderful if each student has his or her own copy, so that they can, every time you do a reading section, whether it's informational or persuasive or poetry, drama, you know, whatever it might be, they would have a tool there to work with. But for the younger teachers, I wanted the teachers to be aware of what they're building toward, so that they could see what is being tested and how this author's purpose and author's craft is coming together. So I know Gretchen talked to you about the writer's purpose and why you would write something, and she also talked to you about how do you get that done, you know, what's the craft. And if you look at the questions that we have on the released star, that was the only ones I could, you know, access. Well, if you look at those, you see that so many of the questions are about author's craft. Why did the author do this? The author said this to do what? You know, that kind of thing. So I prepared a handout for you that has some pieces to it so that it's interactive. And so what you have is you have a blue folder, and I want to show you mine so that you'll be aware of where we're going. You know, I'd like for you to see what we're working toward. We're going to fold it in toward the middle, as you can see, and then we open it up, and we've got lots of pieces inside. And these pieces are all related to the release test. And you'll see how this helps you in just a little while. But what I wanted you to see first was where we're going. I think having the broad picture is extremely important in order to successfully get there. Okay, now then, this gives you a little opportunity to label the sections while we're waiting on the stapler. If you'll go ahead and label each line. This is all STAR released models, question models. And if you'll notice, the first purple step is going to be crossover questions. The second are fiction. Literary nonfiction and poetry are both yellow, so put literary nonfiction first, and then poetry. Drama is on the second light blue line, which is down toward the end. And then persuasive will be next to the bottom. Be sure your first level is crossover questions, and that's on the first purple. The drama begins in 4th grade. Okay. So I put 4 arrow going from then on. And persuasive is 5th grade. That's the first time you'll see a persuasive piece on the test. So you put 5th grade arrow. That means it'll continue after 5th grade. And then expository is your other readiness standard. Now that means that fiction and expository will always be on a tested item. But they may switch around on the others, and you may have poetry one year and not that the next. And so it'll vary depending on the grade, on the year. And so you'll see literary nonfiction, poetry, drama, and persuasive kind of all switched around. And it won't always be every single year you'll have all of the genres. But what you want to do is be prepared every year for all of the genres. And so what I've done is just selected the released questions for each genre. And I've put them all together for you. Now, what you also have in your packet, you have the masters. So if you want to run this for your children, your students, you will have the masters for that. So that'll make it very easy for you to make these in your classroom. Now, y'all, yes, it takes a little time to put this little folder together, but guess what? Then you use it all year long. Every time you read anything, you get out your folder. And you've got your folder to refer to think about, ask the questions for, have the kids make up their own questions relating to that story, or that poem, or that drama, or that persuasive piece. You know, in other words, you've got the question models for them ready to go, and they can always use those. Now, there is something else I would add to this, and I'm going to show you this right now. If you'll look while I raise the little flap here, the first flap, we have vertical alignment with our star. And what Victoria Young said was that she provided some of the released passages on some grades, not on all. So I had to look at all the grades in order to see what persuasive might look like. Even if I teach a grade that I didn't see one on my release test, that doesn't mean you won't have it if your grade's 5 and up for persuasive. All right, so what I want you to think about is, if I am a teacher of, say, 7th grade, I need to look at my text for 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. In other words, I need to look at my grade, the grade below me, and the grade above me, because I'm going to have students who are ready to move on. I'm going to have students who need some reteaching. So I need to be aware and familiar with that sequence, that vertical alignment. So I highly recommend you're making a little copy of your, I got the document, the vertical alignment document some time ago when I attended a workshop at our service center in Abilene. And what they did was they gave us this vertical document that has all of the texts, K through 12. So what I do, if I'm teaching a certain grade, I'm going to look in here and I'm going to say, oh, I'm going to pick persuasive just for an example. Oh, persuasive starts in 3rd grade on my text. But it's only tested beginning in 5th grade. So I can do some things early on that will prepare and lay the groundwork for this. If you're teaching 11th grade, your star will kick in not this coming year, but the next. And the thing that you can be doing is preparing yourself by teaching the text and being aware of the kinds of questions that they're going to possibly face. One thing that I noticed as I was preparing for today and doing my research for today is that as we were looking at author's craft and author's purpose, it's generally half the questions. Now sometimes it's more, sometimes it's a little less, but it averaged out to be about half of the questions. That's a lot. And a kid could pass or fail depending on their understanding of author's craft. And so that's why this was so wonderful to have the opportunity to share this with you today, because this is where we are really needing to stress our questions. Like, not just what did the author say. Can you recognize that the author said that? He used testimonial. Oh, there it is, you know. But why did he use testimonial? So going that other step into the purpose of using those strategies and those techniques is very important. So on the top of each one of your flaps, you'll always put the text for your grade level, the grade level above, below, and the grade level above you. And I suggest that you also have some examples of real-world examples. Where would they see this in the real world? And that connects to where the kids live. If we don't make things relevant for them, they are not going to pay any attention to us. They don't care about that test as much as we do. What you want them to do is to feel like this is important to me, my life. And if you can do that, then you can also teach them the techniques that will be successful on the star. So every one of the flaps, when you lift the flap, you're going to say text, 3 lines. What do the 3 lines represent? Yes, the 3 grade levels. Mine, the one below, the one above. And then you'll also always have real-world examples. On every flap, you do that for every single flap. This is an excellent question. What do I mean by real-world examples? If on the crossover questions, then they are always asking us to say, how is something alike? How is something different? They're usually asking, how was the message or the theme the same? What was the same? What was the same about this? They might be an open-ended question. How were they alike, or how were they different? And so then you would say, where in real life would I encounter somebody comparing two things? Where do people compare things? Grocery store. The grocery store? Okay. So the grocery store is going to give you some comparisons of this brand and another brand or something like that?
Food labels.
Food labels, yes, would do that in real world. Another thing I was thinking about was there's so many commercials that compare one company to another. You know, we've got Sprint and AT&T always competing with one another. So anytime that you've got something where it talks about how they are different or how they are the same, that would be in a real-world example of crossover question. Fiction, obviously, would be your wonderful opportunities for them to say, when you play a video game, that's fiction, that's fantasy. When you look at that. When you read any kind of text that is entertaining or scares you to death, you know, that's under that same big category. This is all focused on your reading. Your reading. I'm not talking today about science or social studies or math. It's all just focused on your reading instruction. And if you look at some of the questions with me, I want you to just choose any one. Choose the one, your favorite genre. Just choose your favorite genre and open up the flap. And I want you to look for a question. It could be in your grade level or a grade level somewhere near yours. Find a question that's author's craft, that's dealing with why the author said something or did something. Just find one. I mean, almost the first rattle out of the box, right? Okay, what I want you to do is turn to your neighbor and show them yours, because they probably had a different grade level. Okay, now you've shared with your neighbor one example. And think about it, that's only one. And if you look, now I want you to just individually look at your list wherever you were, your favorite spot. And I want you to look for each question. You can put a little dot by the number if you want to, of each question that would obviously be an author's craft question. Now, it may not say the word author in there, but if it says, how was the character portrayed, or something like that, then you're getting into the area of author's craft. But 9 times out of 10 on this test, you're going to find the word playwright, poet, author, writer. You're going to find that word even in the question. But you're going to find some subtle references to craft. For the number of questions that I found, I had a red dot on more than half at almost every grade level. So I just thought that was very interesting. I hope you find it so helpful. Now, if you look right here, I want to show you something else about your packet. The little pieces of sentence strip. This is one sentence strip, and I cut off an end about that big. But inside the top, and I'll show you mine again in just a moment, but I've got this little sensory language, because so often we're talking about the imagery, what paints a picture. And it'll talk about it in terms of the language that the author uses, the kinds of details that the author includes, and so forth. And you might have a quote from the story or something that uses one of those references. It could be a simile or a metaphor or some other image that they're presenting to you. And then they're asking you, why did the author use that? What was the purpose of that quote or that use of language? The diction that an author uses, which is the words and the phrases, the exact way they put it together, is a perfect example of craft and how craft comes alive. Inside the folder are icons from it's a bookmark that I have on my website. And you can download this bookmark. It'll say, here's the name of it. If you want to write it on the very front of your packet, because that's where my website is, just write this on the very front of your packet. Sensory Strip 3. Sensory Strip 3. And it will be an entire bookmark that has all of these icons on it. Now, what I like about the icons is that even if you have a child who is second language, who is dealing with some difficulties with their understanding English, they understand icons. And so you can say, what did we see in this story? What was an evidence of a detail that helped you to see what was going on in this story? You know, he crouched under the table, awaiting the footsteps to get nearer to the door. You know, well, can't you see that? Crouching under the table, footsteps coming, that was what I heard. You know, so those kinds of details are presenting to you that picture that the author is creating so that you, the reader, can pretend you're there. So these are all from my little Sensory Strip 3. And so that means there's going to be 3 bookmarks on a page. For my students, I always printed those off and laminated them and gave them to every student. Every student had one. That would go in my little pocket there on that left-hand side. And that way they had that to reference when we were talking. But for you guys, I thought, well, maybe this would be a fun way to put it instead of putting it in the pocket. So I just kind of changed my little strategy here, but I'm still including this because I think it's one of really important thing. Now, how can that help in writing? Did you include some of these details? Whoa! Then you've really painted us a good picture. So it gives you ways to use this for reading and writing. So that's a really strong element there. And then over here is author's purpose. It's like a pie, P-I-E. Persuasion, information, entertainment. Those are the 3 major categories that all of our genre will fit under. So persuasion, information, and entertainment. And that's in that little piece of the sentence strip that I cut off. So that is actually written in your packet somewhere, but you can just put over there pie, and you'll remember where it is, okay? Now, something that is really important as we look at the star, I kind of categorize some things on this piece of paper here. It's your lime green strip that you glued in earlier. I want us to think about this because these are, I called it, for the star, you know, super techniques and awesome reasons. In other words, the techniques that the author uses are, look at the bottom section, dialogue, dramatic irony, point of view, mood, the message itself, etc., etc. Those are techniques that an author uses. But the questions on STAR don't ask you to identify. They ask you why they chose to use dialogue, why they chose to use first-person point of view. So these are the why parts right here. So all of these right here are your why. Why did the author do that? Well, he wanted to create a suspense. Why did the author use it? He wanted to help the reader visualize. Those were all taken as answer choices from the STAR released. So y'all, this is like gold over here. So when you ask a kid, if you've got kids that you're trying to build that foundation for, you give them 2 or 3 choices. Make sure one of them is the one you want. But you give them 2 or 3 choices, and then they take those choices and kind of figure it out. Really, how did he do that? You know, what was the deal with that? So you want to help them to recognize not only the technique, but why the author would use that technique. So the purpose of the technique for using that. So as you can see, this folder has everything you'd want to know about the genres, the purpose, the craft, all of those things. What I've just tried to do is just organize it for you in a way that might be easy for you to access. And I just want it to be helpful as you were teaching this with the children. Having these questions early right here in your hand with one little bitty deal is wonderful. Now I want to show you the back because this is kind of fun. If you notice, the back is just a brown envelope, right? What would I put in the brown envelope? I might have an activity they're going to do, a reading selection they're going to use. I might have some choices of things they might use. So the things that I would put back there would be things that I want to keep up with. Your kiddos, when they turn something in, you can put it back in there and you've got it all together. You know, everything having to do with the author's purpose, questions they come up with for stories. So you've got a space to keep that and to house that. Isn't that the hard part sometimes, is keeping up with stuff? You know, putting it all together in a place that will be easy to access and easy to use. And so flashcards could go in here. Anything that would be helpful, whatever it is you use with your students that would be helpful for them. So I hope that you'll find this to be a helpful tool. It took me a long time just to sort it out, you know, put everything together in the ways that they needed to be. Now in your packets, you have the masters for the colored sheets. Let's get back to the, you have the masters for the colored sheets, those 4 pages, and you have the 3 on a page green sheet. So your green, lime green sheet, I have the 3 on a page there for you, so that that's easy to run off if you choose to make this for your students. It'll be easy access for you to make sure that you have what you need for that. You're welcome. I'm glad. Yes, I thought that would save you a lot of grief and make it easy to access. I love things that I can use and turn around quickly. You know, oh, that's an idea I can use tomorrow. You know, so not that you're going to school tomorrow, but you know what I mean. Yeah, you can use it really soon, in other words. She really appreciates having something she can use now from now to the end of school, so that she's got a better handle on it for next fall when she's beginning the process. We've already kind of finished our STAR testing, so it's not like you're going to be preparing them for that. But you can get used to referencing these kinds of questions and the kinds of techniques that the authors are using with your last 6 weeks. And that'll give you a nice opportunity to try it out, see what works, what you want to change, and so forth. And then you can start out the year fresh with a brand new set of kids and a brand new folder for them to use. Now, y'all, here's another thing to think about. Let's pretend I teach 8th grade and you teach 9th grade. Well, what I can do is, as an 8th grade teacher, I can send those back with my students on to the next teacher. And so you can always use these over and over again. It's not like they're going to die, you know, just because the end of the year is over. So you've got to send it on, you know. They don't evaporate. It's not like Mission Impossible, you know, where it just evaporates as soon as you get it, you know. So you've got to keep it that. All right, now, let's look at just a moment at some of the material that I brought you on the PowerPoint and see how that relates to what you have in your packet. When you think about the text, any genre that we might have, all of the genre, there's 3 things that are always going to be present. First, you're going to have the writer, the author, the playwright, the poet, you know, whichever word they call it. You're going to always have that. And you're going to have some kind of topic or purpose for writing. And then you want to always keep in mind your audience. What is the context of this piece of writing? What is the culture for which I'm writing? In other words, is this a happy culture or a sad, upset culture? You know, what do they like? What is this group of people that's going to be reading this? Teenagers, you know, they got a lot of angst going on. So you write with that audience in mind if you're trying to write for the young adults, young adult lit. You'll find a lot of young adult stories have a lot of sadness and pain within them. That's because that's where a lot of our kids live, sadness and pain. So you have a lot of things that they can relate to. The author's purpose is just, why are they writing this? Are they writing to entertain you? Are they writing to persuade you to do something or to think a certain way? What is a good example of persuasion that we see now every day? Commercials, exactly. What's another one that we're seeing now that because of this, the time of year and the time of season? Politicians, yes, and those political statements and so forth and so forth. So you're seeing a lot of that kind of thing. That's real world persuasion. And that's going on right now, big time. So the examples are there for you. So when you think about it, I always think about this as a pie. You know, that's a visual for them to remember it by. Persuasion, or to convince somebody. Informing or explaining something. On our STAR test, we're going to see more of explain instead of inform, but it's all the same. Entertainment. And entertainment comes in the poetry, the stories, the fiction. The literary nonfiction is sometimes informational and entertaining. It can be both. What about the drama? You know, things that they present to us as opportunities for the genres. Those are entertainment. I think we have to broaden our meaning of entertainment. Entertainment doesn't always mean, woohoo, we're happy. Woo, isn't that cute? Isn't that funny? You know, we've got to remember that entertainment is anything that moves your emotions. Anything that causes you to feel or think a certain way. If it's like, I'm sad, or maybe I'm scared, or I'm happy, or isn't that sweet, I'm so touched. You know, I can cry about that. It's inspiring. You know, those are all different ways of entertainment. So entertainment's that broad category that covers a lot of different ones. Your main ingredients, of course, are your message. What do you want to convey? What is your purpose for writing? And then how do they get there? The diction, the choice, the syntax, the way they put it together. So if you're talking to your students about syntax and diction, this is a perfect place. A lot of your questions on STAR present to us a piece out of the text, a quote that is a good example of diction of some kind. And it's asking you, why did the author do that? What did the author mean by that? So they're giving you opportunities to really talk about well-chosen words and phrases. The point of view of the author, they're either positive or negative, usually. You'll feel that through the piece. You're going to get that. Are they somebody that's been there? Is it somebody that's doesn't have a grip on what I'm going through? You know, or do they really understand where I am? So you're going to have different kinds of responses that come from the author's purpose and their point of view. That goes together. And here's an important thing about point of view. And I loved what one of the teachers in the first session said. She said, this is what we want them to understand when they're talking to each other. Because I've got my point of view, you've got your point of view. So when you speak, what am I supposed to learn from you? Your thoughts and your feelings, your knowledge about a certain topic. Those are all very important things that we learn when somebody is speaking from a certain point of view. My point of view, if you listen to me, you're going to hear my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences, my motivations. What made me do this? What did I have to sacrifice to be here? You know, we all have a story of sacrifice, don't we? If we've lived long enough. This is my 40th year in education. And so my motivations are to share as much as I can as long as I'm able to stand up and do it. Because I love doing it. I love helping kids and teachers to share in the experiences that we help our children to do better. That's what we're here for. We're here to just give them every opportunity to be successful. And we can't do that if we don't believe we can. So that's why it's so important, I think, for us to share with each other. These Stellar Saturdays, what an awesome opportunity to get together with your friends and share with each other. And the goals, what goals do you have? And why are you doing that? What is it that you want to do? You better understand the selection, but you also understand better each other. And so those are two things to do. Okay? Persuasion. We all know what persuasion is, but just as a review, persuasion is to try to change your position. You're going to at least hear somebody's position on a topic. If you don't hear them say what their position is, then you're probably not in a persuasive piece. It's probably informative. So what you want to think about is you've got to hear a position. I feel this way, I don't feel this way. Or I feel it's really wrong, I feel it's really right. You've got to have that position in order to move on. And that way, that makes it persuasive. And that's a technique that a lot of writers use. They'll give you both sides, but then they'll tell you why their side is the best one. So having knowledge of both sides is extremely important. So I'm going to select the facts from my side to support me. Now, don't you hear that all the time in the politicians' remarks? You know, they'll pick the things that they want you to believe, those facts that they want you to believe, so they select them to fit what they need to fit. Convincing language. Let me just read this to you. This is kind of fun. I'm going to ask you to hold my microphone for me. Thank you. Okay. Now that I have your attention, let me introduce myself. Mr. Al Foxword, salesman. Call me Al. I can sell anything. Just see for yourself. Here are Al's satisfied customers. A penguin says, "Oh, Al's a genius. I'm finally cool thanks to the Icebox 2000. He sold me that recently." That's the penguin. Next is a fish. "Al is the best. The aqua umbrella changed my life." And then we've got the mole speaking. He came out of his hole to tell this. "Al rocks. Now I see the light with my deluxe dirt vacuum." We could go on, but I know what you're thinking. "Al, I don't need that incredible stuff. I just need a book, a great book." Well, this is your lucky day, my friend. Have I got a book for you? My #1 bestseller, Say Goodbye to Boring Books. You know the ones I'm talking about. Storybooks that put you to sleep like Sleeping Beauty. School books that add up to 0 fun, like your math book. Cookbooks that leave a bad taste in your mouth. Cooking with Broccoli. The dictionary. And the dictionary is a book so boring, even words can't describe it. Let me take a moment to compliment you. That outfit you're wearing is just simply breathtaking. It really brings out the color in your eyes. Now, my friends, let's talk business. I like you, so I'm going to make you an offer you cannot refuse. If you buy my book in the next 10 seconds, I will throw in the very own top-of-the-line bookmark. Woohoo! I know what you're thinking, Al. This is just too good to be true. Not convinced? Well, research shows that 100% of my customers noticed a dramatic increase in happiness after buying my book. Amazing transformation. Now, you can see how the book is giving you the opportunity to talk about the different kinds of techniques that a persuasive speaker or writer can use. What was one of the techniques that this writer gave us an example of? Testimonials. All right, we had the fish, the mole, and okay. What was another one? Flattery. Very big. Okay, what else? The comparison to other items. Oh, you don't want that. Oh, that's so boring. Oh, that's not good. Oh, blah, blah, blah. But have I got a deal for you? Also, giving another treat in addition. If you do it within the next 10 seconds, I'm going to give you a bookmark, you know. So anyway, you've got the opportunity here to talk about research, but I wanted you to talk more in terms of what language and techniques did that writer use. Now, I would bring out a letter to the editor or a maybe a political speech, and we would look at that. See, that's now reaching our real true reading level. And I go into that and say, what techniques did they use here that were similar to the ones we had in Have I Got a Book for You? So you're giving them the opportunity to make a connection. This was simple and straightforward, but your one in the letter to the editor or the one in the political speech might not have been quite so out there. It might have been a lot more subtle. And so this just gives you a chance to kind of move from one to the next. If you want to have poetry, try to choose a poem that will be working with what you're doing. What if I'm about to introduce a writing unit that's going to have a lot of grammar in it? I want to focus on the grammar as I do this. So I would use this poem by Ralph Fletcher called Writer's Block. We're doing grammar in school, which is bad enough, but now it's infiltrating my dreams. I dreamed I was playing football against a huge run-on sentence. Coach said I had to stop him. I threw a wicked block on that sentence that knocked him into the next paragraph and dislocated 3 compound words. Verbs cracked. Nouns splattered. The big sentence just splintered till only fragments were left. That's from A Writing Kind of Day, Poems for Young People. And some of the poems may be too unsophisticated for your grade level, but I think you'll find some in here that are wonderful for your grade level. So I love this. And you could talk about, okay, that poem had some really vivid verbs in it. Let's look at our writing now and see what kind of verbs we used in our piece that we wrote. Or you can say, what kind of verbs did this writer use in this story? And why did they use that word instead of another? And talk about word choice. I think a lot of times we just talk about word usage, not word choice. And when I think about choice, that means I did have other words I could have used, but they weren't as effective. You know, saying something was wonderful, happy, awesome. You know, when we say things like that, we're not creating a picture for anybody. We're just using cliche words, words that are too general for anybody to get a picture of. So we need to be very specific, but show them a writer that does that. You know, give them a mentor text that really does what you want them to do. And then that way they have some model to use and to go by. Informing. Well, obviously, if you're going to inform somebody, you've got to present some evidence, you know, something that they can use to back up what you're saying. And so you're going to have details and instructions and events and places that are happening there. You want to include those things in any piece that you're reading. Well, that means we look for it when we're looking in this. A lot of times your informative pieces, the ones that are expository, are going to include a lot of text features that are very different, like tables and maps and graphs and charts. Margaret Mooney has written a wonderful, very simple, straightforward book. This would be an excellent professional resource for you to have on your campuses. And it's called Text Forms and Features. It's a real simple book put together in a way that's very easy to access. If you're doing a piece of persuasion, you can look up the definition of persuasion. And they always have this, the why would you do that? Why would you use this? What did you use there? What kind of language, what kind of support? And what are your features of that particular kind of genre? And the why, the what, and the features are always present in every genre that you can imagine. Okay, that's the P-I, and then next is the E, which is our entertainment. And entertainment comes in different forms, you know, the poems and drama, the plays, stories that you might want to read, comic strips. You know, comic strips are great for inference because a lot of times the humor is because it refers to something you've got to figure out or that you have to have background knowledge for. You know, some people would go, ah, and you're going, what? You know, what is that? It's because you didn't get it. You didn't know what the background knowledge information was. The mood that an author creates is often very important in entertainment. Are they trying to make you feel relaxed and inspired? Are they trying to make you feel scared? Are they trying to make you feel happy? What is it they're trying to create there? What kind of mood? Are they trying to make you feel that suspense that they're wanting you to create? You know, are you feeling a little, can't put it down till tomorrow? You know, I sometimes when I'm reading Jodi Picoult's books, I can't put it down. You know, she writes them in these fairly nice, handleable paragraph sections, you know, because she does it from the different characters' points of view. But that sometimes things are happening and you just can't put that book down. Well, she's created a sense of suspense that keeps me holding and reading that book. Now, just for us, we're going to do the easy button here. Okay, this is not hard at all. But I just thought it would be a kind of fun thing for you to do. And you might could have kids bring in examples of either persuasive, informative, or entertaining. And then you read it to the class and everybody has to figure out which one it is, which genre is it. So it's a pretty simple little thing, but I'll read it to you, and then you'll shout out what kind it is. Is it persuasive, informative, or entertaining, okay? New York City is probably one of the busiest cities in the world. It is located in southeastern New York, and if you drive just a little farther, you drive along the Long Island Expressway onto Long Island. In New York City, there are several attractions to visit, such as the Empire State Building and the massive New York Library. Very good. All right, that was easy. Now, welcome to the story of Despero Tilly, a mouse who is in love with music, stories, and a princess named P. It is also the story of a rat called Roscuro, who lives in the darkness and covets a world filled with light. And it is the story of Miggery Sow, a slow-witted serving girl, who harbors a simple, impossible wish. 3 characters are about to embark on a journey that will lead them down into a horrible dungeon, up into a glittering castle, and ultimately into each other's lives. Entertainment, that's right. What is the story that they're talking about here? Despero. The Tale of Despero, that's right. Look around you, and all you see are varying sizes of clones. All dressed so similarly, even the variations are boring. Come on. I know that I and probably 95% of the rest of this school are tired of wearing school uniforms. Polo shirts, khaki pants, and sneakers at least 4 days a week are not my idea of a decent wardrobe. Persuasive. The next thing I want you to do is to look for a piece of paper that says P-I-Q-U-E at the top and has this, and I want you to pull that paper out and just put it to the side, because I'm going to show you something else before we actually do that. With my students, I like to have an opportunity to picture walk before I start reading the story. But that's because I don't want to stop the flow of the story as I'm reading. But I want them to have some pictures in their minds that they can have in their heads as I'm reading. So I'll often do a picture walk, even with older students. I'll show them some of the pictures, because sometimes the art is some of the most beautiful part. But I just wanted to tell you that the art of books is often giving you more information than you had with the words. Or it is supplementing the information. There's something that this author does with his art that is I'm going to actually not call attention to before I begin the story, because I want you to hear the story first, and then I will do that. But I wanted you to see some of the art, just a few pictures of the art before I share the story with you. Look at the perspective that he uses as well. Isn't that interesting? The way he uses a close-up perspective for this. And then you see he's greeting the children. And I always ask the kids, do you notice anything different of the way he's dressed and the way they've dressed? Here he is talking to the rest of the tribe. Okay, now you kind of have a sense of where we are, and I want to share the story now. The remote village waits for a story to be told. News travels slowly to this corner of Kenya. As Kameli nears his village, he watches the herd of bull giraffes crossing the grassland. He smiles. He's been away a long time. A girl sits under the guava tree and sees him first and shouts to the others, "He's come!" The children run to him with the speed and grace of cheetahs. He greets them with a gentle touch to the head. "Supa! Hello!" Kameli hears over and over again. Everyone wants to greet him. His eyes find his mother across the Inkang, the ring of huts with their roofs of sun-baked dung. She spreads her arms wide and calls to him, "Ankua, welcome my son." Kameli sighs. He is home. This is sweeter and sadder because he cannot stay. He must return to the faraway country where he's learning to be a doctor. He thinks of New York then, and he remembers September. A child asks if he's brought any stories, and Kameli nods. He has brought one story, and it has burned a hole in his heart. But first, he must speak with the elders. Later, in a tradition as old as the Maasai, the rest of the tribe gather under the acacia tree to hear the story. There's a terrible stillness in the air as the tale unfolds. And with growing disbelief, men and women and children listen. Buildings so tall they can reach the sky? Fires so hot they melt iron? Smoke and dust so thick that they block out the sun? The story ends. More than 3,000 souls are lost. A great silence falls over the Maasai. Kameli waits. He knows his people. They are fierce when provoked, but easily moved to kindness when they hear of suffering or injustice. At last, an elder speaks. He is shaken, but above all, he is sad. What can we do for these poor people? Nearby, a cow lows, heads turned toward the herd. To the Maasai, Kameli says softly, "The cow is life. I want to give my cow." He asks for their blessing, and they give it gladly, but they want to do something more. The tribe sends words to the United States Embassy in Nairobi. In response, the embassy sends out a diplomat. His jeep jounces along the dusty, rugged road. He is hot and tired, and he thinks he's about to meet with the Maasai elders. He cannot be more wrong. As the jeep nears the edge of the village, a man sits up. Clearly, this is no ordinary visit. This is a ceremony. Hundreds of Maasai greet the American in full tribal splendor. At the sight of the blood-red tunics and spectacular beaded collars, he can only marvel. In the day, he has met the sacred ritual. Young warriors dance, leaping into the air like fish from a stream. Women sing mournful songs. Children fill their bellies with milk. Speeches are exchanged. And now is the time. Kameli and his people gather on a sacred knoll far from the village. The only sound is the gentle chiming of cowbells. The elders chant a blessing in Maha as the Maasai people of Kenya present 14 cows for America. Because there is no nation so powerful it cannot be wounded, and no people so small that they cannot offer mighty comfort. Now, if you'll notice some of the art, I want to show you a couple of images and see if that reminds you of anything that might have brought this story to life from the artist's point of view. Look at the reflection in his eyes. What does that show? The Twin Towers being attacked, right? Earlier in the story, we saw other images of the Twin Towers. You see how he's presented that to us in many different ways. That happens on several different pictures there. Now, the last page, you know, the opening there, is about the story from Kameli's point of view. So we are told this story in a narrative fashion. And then he tells the story from his own, like a memoir. And then I went to the internet and found the actual article that was written about the donation of the cows to America. And so I had the informative piece here. So notice already I have 3 different genres with just one story, because I brought those extra pieces in to show. So that is one way to bring in several genres and make a connection that they would remember forever and get the whole impact of the importance of genre. Now, just for fun, I want you to look in your little folder that you've created and look for fiction. And see if there's one question there you could ask your neighbor about this story that you heard. So what's one question that would be a star-like question that you could use? So look at the fiction and see what's one question you could ask that would be like the star would have on it. In 14 Cows for America, what does the cow symbolize? Okay, now if the kid says life, that's what it means, it's not what it symbolizes. So what does it symbolize? It symbolizes hope, sacrifice, generosity. You know, there could be all kinds of things that they could respond there that they could utilize as the answer here. That's a short answer question. And so that would be an opportunity for them to learn how to do a short answer question. Now, anytime that you move from one piece to another, you have this handy dandy little reference to use as you're helping the children see the importance of looking at this with depth. That's the whole thing I think that we want to think about is our discussions need to have depth. And how can we reach that? We have to ask different kinds of questions. And asking those questions about why the author did something is where we get to that depth that we need to have. So I think that's really a very powerful thing. Now, the one last thing that I thought would be fun to share with you guys, I was asked, this was several years ago, but I was asked to do a session for some seniors who had not passed the exit level test. It was, you know, not with STAR, obviously, because we haven't had that, but it was with the other test. And so I was asked to go. I went to the inner city Houston to a school there, and I was with seniors now, mind you. You just keep that in mind when I'm doing this. And they were having trouble. That group had missed a lot on the main ideas, summary, you know, those kinds of things. They had missed a lot of those questions. So they wanted me to include something that they could remember about summary when we were doing this. So I came up with what I call the summary website. And so I'm going to show it to y'all, and you can use it if you want to. If you don't want to, that's okay too. You know, I like to share different kinds of things because different people like different things. And so this may or may not float your boat. Now, in a story, there's always two kinds of hows. There's the, how are you feeling? Woo, I feel good. Or how was I feeling? I feel sad, or I feel scared. You know, all those things that you could feel. So the feelings will be the one kind of how. Another kind of how is a process, like the way it was put together. Was it chronological? First, next, last? Did it have a flashback? Did it have a flashback and then first, next, last? You know, what happened there? How did they put that together? So my how is always going to have two things that I often have to discuss. So how were they feeling? Good or bad? And then what was the process? First, next, last. Or we could have a flashback, first, next, last. So you can kind of do it any way you want to. Now, a good website's also going to have a slash mark. And we're going to have one too. So everybody, slash BME. All right, go. Slash BME. That stands for what? Excellent. And then slash PS. Problem solution. Woohoo! All right, very good. Now, let's do the words now. And it's real important to think about the words in this order because I start with the most important things. That is, who did what and why. Do it with me. Who did what and why. Again. Who did what and why. Again. Who did what and why. At Where and when? One, two, three. Where and when? Now let's do all of that little line right there. All right. Who did what and why? At, where and when. Very good. Let's do the whole thing now. One, two, three. Ready to go. Who did what and why? At, where and when. Dot, how. Feeling. And
Process. First, next, last, slash, beginning, middle, end, slash,
okay, now you can see how that's a little fun rap thing that you can do with your kids. And what happens is they then have that to rely on when they have to look at one of the choices. Because what we found was on most of the choices, it was a beginning, middle, end thing. In other words, they left out part. In the wrong answers, they left out the beginning or the middle or the end. They left out one of those pieces. And so that made it incorrect answer choice. And so if you think about that, there was one of them I think that was like a problem solution. So if you think about the whole string and how it all fits together, you've got an opportunity to get most of your summary questions correct. So this is just a way to help them work toward perfection. We want perfection. We want them to be feeling good about that when they go into the test. So this just gives them a little tool. Now, I'm going to say it slowly so you can write it down. So here we go, all right? www at www dot how. Now y'all, here's what I do for how. I put a little heart up there and I go arrow up, arrow down. That means woohoo or ooh, you know. And then I draw a little box. That's my process, first, next, last. So if I do my little heart with my two arrows and my box, that reminds me of what I need to think about. And then slash, BME, which is your beginning, middle, end, BME, and then slash, and then problem, solution, or PS, problem, solution. So that's really a fun way to do that. Now, you may think, you know, I'm not doing that. And that's okay. Everybody doesn't have to do everything just alike. But a lot of times we're just looking for any new little technique that might help us and help our kids get it. Now, the kids laughed a lot that day. You know, they thought that was so funny. Some were a little too cool to do it, which is okay. But guess what? They probably didn't forget it. And so even though the experience might not have been like 100% we're all into it like I was, it was okay. Because what was happening was they were taking it home. And that's what my purpose was. I want every one of my kids to be successful. What am I going to have to do to get there? Sometimes I have to make myself look silly. And it's okay with me. I'm okay. You know, I can brush it off. It's all right. I'd like for you to turn to your neighbor and say one thing that you feel like you can take away from today, from our session. Thank you for all you do for your kiddos. And thank you so much for all you do.